Your 30s will be the highest earning decade of your life so far. They will also be the decade you have the least to show for it. Both things are true at once, and the collision between them decides everything that comes after. Keep two people in mind while I explain that. Corinne and Silas. Same street, same $78,000 salary, same $11,000 in savings. Same student loan they had both stopped opening the emails about. At 65, Corinne is deciding whether Tuesday is a golf day. Silas is still setting an alarm, not because he loves the work, because the math never closed. It was not luck, neither of them inherited a dime. It was not the market, because they held the same index fund through the same crashes. And it was not income, because Silas out-earned her almost every single year after 38. It was one decade, a window that opened at 30 and quietly shut at 40, and neither of them heard it close. My name is Nick, and I have spent an unreasonable amount of my life staring at spreadsheets so that you do not have to. Today, I am opening that window and walking you through it, and if you have ever felt like you work harder than you did at 25 and somehow have less, subscribe, because that feeling is not a character flaw. It is a scheduling problem, and I can prove it with arithmetic. Three forces are operating on you in this decade. I am going to name them now so you can watch them work. The squeeze, which is why the money is not there, the halving, which is why the money you do not save now costs double, and the line of sight, which is the one nobody warns you about and the one that actually got Silas. Two things I want you to hold on to as we go. There is 1 month in Silas's 30s, one completely ordinary month where he made two reasonable decisions, not stupid ones. Reasonable, that month cost him more than 20 years of white-knuckle catching up ever gave back, and I will give you the exact number. And there is one afternoon in Corinne's 30s that took about 15 minutes. I will tell you what she did at the end, and I want you to notice how aggressively boring it is. Start with where you actually stand, because the number in your head is almost certainly wrong, and it is wrong in a specific direction. The Federal Reserve's survey of consumer finances puts the median net worth of an American household under 35 at $39,000. The average is $183,000. Sit with that gap because it is the single most useful thing in this video. The average is nearly 5 times the median. That is not a rounding difference. That is a handful of extremely wealthy households standing on the scale while you try to weigh yourself. The median is you. The median is the person in the middle. The average is a room where one guy sold a startup and 49 people are splitting a burrito divided by 50, and then handed to you as your benchmark. And you have spent your whole adult life comparing yourself to the guy who sold the startup. So from here on, when I give you a median, that is you. When I give you an average, that is the burrito room. Vanguard says that if you are between 25 and 34, your median retirement balance is about $16,000 and the average is about $42,000. Between 35 and 44, median around $40,000, average around $76,000, and roughly half of households under 35 have no retirement account at all, not a small one. None, so if you have anything at all, you are already ahead of a coin flip. Now, the squeeze. Your 30s are the decade where every major expense in a human life shows up at once and parks in your driveway. Childcare runs about $1,230 a month for center-based infant care. In 45 states plus the District of Columbia. Care for 2 children costs more than your annual mortgage payment, your children cost more than your house, and childcare prices rose about 29% between 2020 and 2024, while overall inflation rose about 22%. So the thing eating your paycheck got worse faster than everything else that was already getting worse. Your student loans are still there, patiently waiting. Borrowers in their 30s hold about a third of all student debt in America, with an average balance north of $40,000. You did not outrun it in your 20s, it moved in with you. Your down payment became a 30s problem. The National Association of Realtors put the median first-time buyer at 40 last year. I want to be straight with you, though, because that number is contested. The Mortgage Bankers Association and the New York Fed, working from much bigger data sets, put it closer to 32 or 33. The direction is real. The headline is disputed. Either way, it is your problem now, and it was your parents' problem a decade earlier in their lives. and your parents are getting older, and the phone calls start changing in tone. You know the ones. So, right now, some of you are thinking, okay, Nick, great, but I am living the squeeze. I cannot save $500 a month. I do not have $500 a month. What exactly am I supposed to do with this information? That is the correct objection, and I want to answer it honestly rather than pretend it away. You are probably not going to outsave the squeeze. Almost nobody does. The daycare years are the daycare years, and no amount of budgeting turns $1,230 a month into zero. If you are 3 years into infant care and treading water, you are not failing. You are paying the single largest bill of your life at the exact moment your income is smallest. But here is what actually matters, and it will sound too small to be true. The difference between them was never $500 a month during the hard years. It was what happened to their money on the far side of the hard years and whether the system to catch it was already built before the money showed up. You are not being asked to outsave your daycare bill. You are being asked to build the catcher now while it is cheap, so that when your income finally clears the squeeze, it lands somewhere. Which brings us to the halving. Take $1,000 of your money and invest it at 30. Assume 7% after inflation, which is roughly the long-run real return of the American stock market over the last century. By 65, you have about $10,600 in today's purchasing power. Now invest that exact same $1,000 at 40 instead. Same fund, same market, same you. By 65, it is about 5,400. You lost half. Not by making a bad choice, by making the right choice 10 years late. That is the halving, and it applies to every dollar you touch this decade. Now scale it to something that looks like your life. Corinne puts away $500 a month from 30 to 40. Then at 40, she stops. Completely never contributes another dollar to that account as long as she lives. Total in $60,000. Silas waits out the squeeze, starts at 40, and puts in $500 a month every month until 65 without missing one. Total in $150,000. He contributes $90,000 more than she does. 2.5 times the money. He never panics, never sells, never misses. At 65 at 7%, she has about $495,000. He has about $405,000. The woman who quit wins by $90,000, having contributed $90,000 less. At 8%, your gap widens to about $196,000. At 10%, she finishes near $1.2 million and he finishes near $663,000, and it stops being a comparison and becomes a mugging. Now, I am not telling you to stop saving at 40. Please do not do that. That would be a genuinely insane takeaway. What I am telling you is that the dollars you get in during your 30s do structural work that nothing you do later replicates. They are not the same dollars as the ones you will save at 45. They only look the same on your statement. Which is why, in your 30s specifically, your savings rate matters more than your returns. Say you have $20,000 invested. A spectacular year, 20% earns you $4,000. Meanwhile, raising your own contribution by $300 a month earns you $3,600. Guaranteed, no market risk, no research, no opinion required. Nearly the same number, except one of them needs the entire global economy to cooperate, and the other needs you to open a website. This flips eventually. Once your balance is big enough, returns take over completely, and your account develops a life of its own. But that crossover usually will not arrive until your second decade of saving. Right now, you are the engine, not the market. You, which is why Corinne spent almost no time picking investments, and Silas spent an enormous amount of it. Silas was optimizing. He had opinions about semiconductors, and I want to be fair to him, some of those opinions were correct. He was solving the wrong problem with real skill, which is one of the most expensive things you can do with a good brain. If you have ever spent a Saturday comparing expense ratios on accounts you are barely funding, you have met your own inner Silas. Now, 3 pieces of standard advice that will hurt you specifically in this decade. Buy a house as soon as humanly possible. Look, home ownership does build wealth for a lot of people, and it may well build yours. But the version sold to you skips the arithmetic. Estimate your unrecoverable annual cost of owning at roughly 5% of the home's value. 1% property tax, 1% maintenance, 3% for the capital you tied up. If comparable rent costs you less than that per year, renting is genuinely cheaper, not morally worse. Cheaper, you are not failing at adulthood, you are doing division. Add transaction costs of 5 to 10% round trip, and the house you leave in 4 years is not your investment. It is an expensive way to store your furniture. The typical seller now stays about 11 years, which is long enough for your math to work. 3 is not. Pay off every debt before you invest $1. The real rule is a threshold, not a slogan. If your rate beats what you would reasonably earn investing, kill the debt. Your credit cards at 20-something%, obviously your used car loan averaging over 11%, absolutely, but your federal student loans are sitting near 6.4%, your mortgage near 6.7%, and the long-run real return on stocks near 7%. Those numbers are touching, which means it depends on your bracket and your nerves. And anyone who tells you there is one universally correct answer is selling you something. And your side hustle will save you. Bankrate surveys this every year. The median side hustle earns $200 a month. The average is $885. There is your burrito room again, waving at you. 28% of people running one earn between $1 and $50 a month. Now, $200 a month invested for 30 years at 7% does become about $244,000, and that is real. But before you sell your weekends for it, go check whether your employer match is fully captured. Same money, 0 hours. I want to stop the math for a minute because I think this next part is the actual video. Here is what the squeeze feels like from inside, and I suspect some of you will recognize the sequence. January, the daycare center sends the annual rate letter. It has gone up $90 a month. You read it twice, looking for the part where it is a mistake. March, you get the raise you have been working toward for 2 years. It is real, it is deserved, and by the time it clears payroll and taxes, it is worth about $340 a month, which is $150 more than the daycare increase already took. You do not feel richer, you feel exactly the same, which is somehow worse than feeling poorer, because at least poorer makes sense. June, the car needs something that costs $1,100, and you put it on the card and you tell yourself you will pay it off in 2 months. September, your dad calls and it is not a normal call, and afterward you sit in the parking lot for a while. November, you open the retirement account for the first time since spring, see a number that has barely moved, and close the app. Roughly 37% of American adults could not cover a $400 emergency entirely in cash. That is not a discipline statistic. That is a structural one. You did not fail a test. You were handed a schedule where the bill for having a life and the bill for building a future arrive inside the same 10 years, and then you were told the difference was your coffee order. It was never your coffee order. It was never going to be your coffee order. If that landed, come find us in our school community. It is where people run their real numbers next to other people in the same decade, and this is all considerably easier to think about when you are not doing it alone at 11 at night with a calculator app. Now your third force, and this is the one that actually got Silas. Economists studied Canadian lottery data and found that when a household won a prize roughly the size of a median annual income, their close neighbor's bankruptcy rate rose by about 6.6%. The neighbors won nothing. They just watched somebody buy visible things. Cars, renovations, and the bankruptcies clustered around the visible assets, never the invisible ones. Nobody has ever gone broke copying a neighbor's sofa. So what wrecked those people was not their income. It was their line of sight. And you have one. It is in your pocket, it refreshes every 4 seconds, and it is showing you the highlight reel of everyone you went to school with. Your 30s are uniquely dangerous here because this is when your raises finally land. The economist David Deming found the college wage premium roughly doubles across a career from about 27% at 25 to about 60% at 55. More income arriving means more raw material for your line of sight to work with. It is not a coincidence that this is the decade your friends start renovating kitchens. So let me account for Silas properly, because I told you at the start that income was not the explanation, and I owe you that arithmetic. He out-earned Corinne by roughly $14,000 a year from 38 onward. Over 22 years, that is a little over 300,000 gross, call it 220,000 after tax. And his savings rate never moved. Not once. Every raise arrived, and every raise was absorbed at exactly the speed it arrived into the bigger house and the newer cars and a life that quietly expanded to fit. That is your whole answer. His income advantage had a savings rate of 0, so it never became an asset. It became a lifestyle, and lifestyles do not compound. That is how the man who earned more finished with less, and it stops being a paradox the moment you follow where the money actually went. Which is worth sitting with, because it means your raise is not the win you have been treating it as. Your raise is a test, and the line of sight is what grades it. So what do you actually do? 3 things, and none of them are clever. Capture your match first, because it is free and people leave it anyway. Roughly 1 in 4 employees does not contribute enough to get their full employer match, leaving about $1,336 a year on the table. Over 30 years at 7%, your forgone match compounds to roughly $126,000. That is a guaranteed 50 to 100% return, skipped because the enrollment form was annoying. Stop trying to beat the market and start owning it. The Spiva scorecard found that in 2025, about 79% of active large cap managers underperformed the plain index you could have bought in 4 clicks. Over the 15 years ending in 2024, not one of 22 American equity categories had a majority of managers beat their benchmark. Not one. These are professionals with research teams and terminals, and they lose to a fund that does nothing. You are not going to outtrade them, and you do not have to. Which means every hour Silas spent on semiconductors was an hour he paid for the privilege of losing to Corinne's autopilot. And automate your raise before it ever touches your hands. Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi ran a program committing future pay increases to retirement savings in advance. Savings rates climbed from 3.5% to 13.5% over about 4 raises, and 78% of people stayed enrolled. Your take-home never drops, you are never asked to give anything up, you are just handing the decision to future you, who is considerably more reasonable and does not want tacos right now. And notice what that does to your line of sight. You cannot spend money you never saw. Which brings me back to Silas and that month. Watch how ordinary it looks, because yours will look like this too. He was 34. New job, good one, $11,000 raise. In the chaos of onboarding, he accepted the default contribution rate instead of the one that captured his full match. Reasonable, you would probably do the same thing. Everybody does. That is about $1,300 a year in free money, and it compounds to roughly $126,000 by 65. That same month, celebrating the raise. He financed a new car at about $770 a month instead of the used one at $530. That difference, $239 a month for 6 years, invested and left alone, would have been about $122,000 by 65. 2 decisions, 1 month, about $248,000. And not one of them felt like a decision at the time. Silas got serious at 45. Genuinely serious. $500 a month, every month, 20 straight years through 2 crashes, never flinched. That produced about $260,000. So 20 years of the exact discipline you are being told to have almost perfectly canceled out one Tuesday afternoon when he was 34. And Corinne's 15 minutes? At 31, she logged into her plan, moved her contribution up to her full match, and checked a box that raised it 1% every year automatically. Then she closed the laptop and did not think about it again for 30 years. That is it. That is the entire difference between the 2 lives I opened this video with. She was not smarter than him, and she was not more disciplined than him. She was disciplined earlier about something smaller at the exact moment it had the most leverage, which is where you are standing right now. I am not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. This is arithmetic and a lot of time spent watching people hit the same wall. Your situation has variables I cannot see from here. But if you take one thing from 20 minutes of this, take the boring one. Do not try to be brilliant this decade. Brilliance is expensive and unreliable and usually just semiconductors. Go check your contribution rate this week, check whether you are capturing the full match, 15 minutes, and it will outperform almost anything else you could do with the same afternoon. And if you want people checking theirs alongside you, our school community is right there. Silas did not lose because he was lazy, he worked harder than you probably do, and he earned more than most of you will, and he lost anyway. He lost because he assumed his window would stay open a little longer. And windows do not announce themselves on the way down. Yours is open right now. That is the only genuinely good news in this entire video, and it is enough.